Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chasing a Murder. Today, we are on part 161 of Life Beyond the Grave, Touch to the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell story. Tylee Ryan, Lori Vallow's own daughter, has been murdered and buried on Chad Daybell's property. Tammy, his wife, has no idea, and neither does his kids. Now, Chad and Tammy's relationship during this time is not doing so well, though Chad is trying to persuade his family that everything's okay. Behind the scenes, he's just counting down the days until he can get rid of Tammy. There's one person that says that he talks to Chad Daybell. And before all this, he had got a chance to speak with Chad about his relationship with Tammy. His name is Jason McWilliam, and it's Chad Daybell's brother-in-law. Jason is married to Tammy's sister, Samantha. It's around this time that they're starting to see a little bit of change between Tammy and Chad. In fact, Jason testified at Chad's trial about a conversation he had with Chad about Tammy.
Was there ever a time that Chad expressed to you any concerns about his marriage to Tammy?
I don't want to say concerns at that time, but you have your relationships that you have with your spouse, and there are times where you don't always get along, and so we might have discussed and talked about some of that.
Did Chad ever discuss with you his intimacy with Tammy, his wife?
There were times he did.
What in particular would he discuss with you about that?
Jack, at this point, this isn't relevant.
Sustained. Was there anything specific in your discussions with Chad that he explained if he had concerns about his relationship with Tammy?
Just in the fact that I think he felt like at times it was a little vanilla. It was a little bland.
What did he say about that?
Just in certain aspects of the relationship, that it was just a marriage of just, we have a lot of routine, just general routine that we go through.
So Chad was bored with his relationship with Tammy. He was obviously, at this point, when he meets Lori, looking for an adventure, something different, something more exciting. According to Melenie Gibb, she says that Lori and Chad were completely in love.
Did you ever have occasion to speak with, when you were during this for approximately 4-day period in September, did you ever have occasion to speak with Lori Vallow about the nature of her relationship with Chad Daybell?
Yes, we talked about it often.
Okay. What did she tell you about that relationship?
That they were very much in love with each other and wanted to be together as soon as possible.
So in September, key words, Lori and Chad wanted to be together as soon as possible. Now, something his brother-in-law Jason noticed about Chad is he was becoming quite obsessed with the religious part of his life.
You use the word hyper-focused. What do you mean by that?
I think as a general rule, most people involved in our religion have a tendency to try to round out the religious information they receive. And in this case, by saying hyper-focused, I would say that it became more of an obsession and more than normal.
At any point in time, during this time frame, did Chad ever express to you a feeling that he had received visions?
He did.
And approximately when did he first start expressing that to you?
Probably around 2010, 2011.
What types of visions did he tell you that he was having?
They were visions regarding how things were going to play out in the last days.
At some point in time, did Chad again visit with you about this experience from Flaming Gorge, and La Jolla, California?
Yes, he did.
Did anything about the experiences as he shared them with you change
Originally, there were experiences that you have that are impactful. They soon became near-death experiences as opposed to just something that was impactful.
Could you explain a little bit more about that to the jury as to what Chad would explain when he couched them as near-death experiences?
Originally, when the stories were told, it was an experience that happened, and then it became an experience that happened in La Jolla, where I had an experience where I saw a relative that had deceased and passed on. And then the experience in Flaming Gorge became my body and spirit were torn and the veil was ripped and I could see into the heavens and into the eternities.
Was there anything about that change that you were concerned by?
Yeah.
What was that?
That it wasn't consistent, that it just became more of a narrative now.
From that point forward, did you continue to see Chad's religious views change?
I did.
In what way?
It started focusing more on end times, more on what would happen in America, what would happen with things in the future.
When did he first start expressing his views on those things?
That would have been around 2013, 2014.
And could you be a bit more specific about the nature of what he was telling you?
He got involved with other authors. They started to publish books and write books. They would talk about, in particular...
Judge, can you just isolate your comments to things that you heard directly from Chad?
Chad Daybell told me there would be 2 earthquakes that would happen. There would be the Wasatch wake-up quake.
And Judge, could I have some foundation as to when?
Started in 2013, 2014, and continued on until he left to go to Idaho and continued on past that.
And I think before we had an objection, I'd ask you to explain to the jury kind of the nature of the things he was telling you about his change of view.
I was informed that there would be earthquakes, that there would be destruction in America. I was informed that there would be invading troops that would come from various different countries into the Americas.
Did those views that he shared with you, did they cause you any concern?
Sure.
In what way?
Well, it's a fear tactic.
Do you mean
That's not an object. Calls for speculation.
overall? You may continue.
In my opinion, it's a fear tactic. It's a way to let people know I know more than you, and therefore you should listen to me.
Why did you perceive it that way?
I perceived it that way because when you bring up anything on a natural disaster, it has a tendency to create fear. When you bring in wars and rumors of wars, it creates fear.
Eventually, I think you said Chad and his family moved to Idaho.
Yes,
And what year was that again?
2015.
At the time that he moved, had he invited you to move with him?
He had.
Can you explain to the jury how that request went and why he was asking you to come?
Towards the end of 2015, he expressed his desire for my wife and I and family to move up to Idaho so that we could be in proximity with our families, with each other.
Did he say any more about that?
He felt that it would be good for us to move up there in order to escape the earthquakes and the desolation and the things that would happen in Utah.
What was he telling you about what it would be like in Rexburg?
He said that Rexburg would be a city of light, place of refuge, place that people would want to come to and be at.
And what was your reaction when he asked you to come up?
My curiosity at first was piqued because I wanted to know. I don't want to be in the middle of a giant earthquake. So naturally I thought, okay, this is something that might be of interest.
Did you take stock in any of his visions? Did you believe any of those things?
Originally, yes, I did.
At that time, were you still embracing maybe some of what he was teaching?
During that time frame, yes.
So why did you eventually not move up to Idaho?
Didn't feel it was right.
Any specific reason why?
There were things that were going on that, to me, it didn't feel right. We had opportunity to visit. Idaho's a beautiful place and a great place for some. It just, for us, wasn't going to be a place that we needed to be at.
Did you tell Chad no, you weren't going to move?
We did.
Did he ever ask you to come up again?
He did.
How often would he ask?
Are you looking specifics or generality?
Well, generality first, then we'll go to specifics.
Generality, just whenever we could. And we did go visit. We had opportunity to go attend family functions and events up there.
Did he ever ask again for you and your family to move to Idaho?
There was a letter that was written to me.
When was that letter written?
In 2016.
And that was a letter from who?
That was from Chad.
What did he say in that letter?
In that letter, he essentially told me that we needed to be in Idaho.
Did he say why he believed that?
He said we needed to be in Idaho because within the next 3 years, there would be a giant earthquake, that Springville and my house would be shaken to the ground and destroyed, and that we needed to escape that destruction before that happened.
Did he claim that to be part of his visions?
Yes.
Did he say anything about the concerns he might have had with your wife?
He did.
What did he say?
He informed me that she was allowed to go south and that the spirits, in particular the dark spirits, would allow her to go south to do whatever she wanted to do, but she was not able to come to Idaho to see the glory and the visions that would happen, and that she more or less was being held back.
What did you take that to mean?
I took that to mean that she was being controlled by dark spirits.
How did you react to him telling you that, or
I wasn't
expressing that? Sorry.
I wasn't thrilled.
Why not?
Because I have a responsibility and a stewardship over my family. That's not Chad's responsibility.
Can you explain to the jury that word stewardship as you're using it? What do you mean by that?
When I'd say the term stewardship would be an ownership or a responsibility or something of that nature, that is my duty, my job, my responsibility.
You just use the word ownership. Are you suggesting that you feel like you own your family?
I wouldn't say that I own my family, but I have a responsibility to them.
Is the idea of stewardship something that is mainstream to the LDS Church?
Yes.
Why were you offended by Chad's statements about your wife and dark spirits relative to your stewardship?
I felt that he was trying to take a stewardship over my family and trying to tell us what we needed to do and where we needed to be.
Did you express any concerns to Chad about that?
Not at the time.
Did you ever, I'll throw that, I think you explained that there were some times after they moved to Rexburg that you would come up and visit them?
Yes.
Was there ever a time that, I'll withdraw that, when you come to visit, what would Chad tell you?
He would, at that time, we didn't talk in depth about any of the different opportunities to come up there because typically there was another event going on. And he would just explain to me how nice it was and just talk about how things are going up there and that things were wonderful.
Did he ever explain any more about his visions of what was going to happen in Rexburg?
He did. He actually invited me to come up on a trip. I took a day trip, went up there and was shown around Rexburg, was taken to BYU, Idaho. I was taken to other various places throughout town.
Do you remember when that trip was?
That trip would have been in 2016. I think it was the spring.
And what kinds of things was he sharing with you as he took you around Rexburg?
He was showing me that this would be a place of city of light, that there would be a refuge for people to come, that it would be a safe haven, areas of where there would be tent cities, areas of where he would expand his property or take his property and turning it into a tent city.
At that point, did you continue to believe or at least be open-minded to his visions as you have been before?
That was probably the first time after I left that I thought, I'm not supposed to be here.
Any reason why you had that thought?
Just my gut feeling of who I am and what I was doing.
Did you ever express that to Chad?
I just told him that I wasn't going to be coming up. That wasn't for us.
I want to stop here for a few moments and talk a little bit about Tammy. Could you just explain to the jury your relationship with Tammy?
I was Tammy's brother-in-law. I thought she was a sweetheart. She was a kind, gentle person that she really had her a lot of people's best interest. She wasn't a saint. None of us are, but she was really, truly an amazing person that just loved people, and in particular, was one that would reach out to touch the individual in my.
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. It's becoming a bit of a narrative.
Same. Did you get any sense from your interactions with Tammy after they started planning a move to Idaho that this is something that she wanted to do?
Judge, objection to foundation.
I'm asking based on his observations and such, Your Honor.
Overruled. From what I observed, she wasn't thrilled about going to Idaho.
What made you feel like that without speaking to anything she may have said?
Tammy was a gal that loved to be around her family and liked to be where she was in Springville and had a good relationship with my wife.
Did Tammy also have other family in Springville?
Yes.
Who else was in Springville?
She had cousins, aunts, nieces, and nephews. The majority of my wife's family was there.
And did your family, you and your wife, have a lot of interaction with these extended family members?
Yes.
Did you ever make any observations about the way Chad and Tammy interacted with each other?
I did.
What observations were those?
Some of the observations I had were that they were happy while they were in Springville. They were a loving couple that were kind and nice to each other.
And did that change once they moved to Idaho?
Judge, I'm going to object unless there's some foundation as to how and when he observed the relationship personally.
Did you have any specific times that you came to Idaho that you observed Chad and Tammy together?
I did.
And when might some of those times have been?
We had opportunity to attend weddings of Chad's children together.
Do you remember approximately what years that happened?
I know there was one in 2018.
Did you make any particular observations in 2018 about Chad and Tammy's interactions with each other?
I felt their interactions were fine and appropriate.
After 2018, during 2018 up until Tammy's passing in 2019, to the best you can recall, can you tell the jury how often were you seeing Chad and Tammy, either in Idaho or Utah?
From what years, excuse me?
The last year of Tammy's life.
We had opportunity to interact with Tammy and Chad at a Christmas party in 2018. After that, the next opportunity that we had to interact with them was in the spring of 2018. They had an opportunity to come to Utah for one of Chad's family functions.
Judge, before an objection, can I void your native objection?
There's no pending questions, so go ahead, Mr. Rickson.
Thank you. Are there other contacts that you had in that last year that you haven't mentioned yet?
Other contacts that we had that I personally had would not be until Tammy's passing.
So in the 2018 interaction, can you describe what that was?
Chad and his family came down, stayed at our residence. We had an opportunity to sit together in a hot tub with my wife, Tammy, Chad, and myself. Interaction was happening, but Chad seemed withdrawn.
What do you mean by that?
He wasn't engaging in the general conversation of the group.
Was that something that was abnormal for you guys when you visit together?
I noted it because it was different.
Did you notice that at the time?
I did.
Did you bring it up with anybody or with Chad?
I didn't bring it up with Chad. Didn't have an opportunity to. I noted it with my wife.
Were there any other interactions that you had in 2018 with Chad and Tammy?
Not that wouldn't be constituted as hearsay, so I would have to say no.
When did you first learn of Tammy's passing?
I was down home running errands.
So Jason noticed a lot of things that many people that new Chad noticed is that he was really focused on this city of light being built near his property. But he doesn't mention the Church of the Firstborn. The Church of the Firstborn doesn't seem to come up until Lori comes into the picture. Still researching that. Here's an interview that Melenie Gibb did with Nate Eaton before the trials.
So Melanie and Alex would come to the house while you were there with Lori, and what was that interaction like? What was that relationship like?
It was kind of fun and enjoyable. Alex was fun, and he was a comedian kind of guy, and we just talk about all kinds of stuff. You know, sometimes spiritual stuff, sometimes non-spiritual stuff. It was in the beginning. It was just more casual because Alex at this point didn't know anything about that until later on.
Would you say that Chad and Lori were kind of leaders, or at least they were working their way to be leaders of a group, of you, of other people that might follow their teachings?
So ultimately, yes. They did believe that they were the head of the 144,000. So, that's scriptural. That word is scriptural, right? But they believed that was what their assignment was. So I guess in some sense, you could say that they were trying to find people that would fit that group.
Now, something you don't hear this group talk about is the fact that they do use terms like vibrations and frequency in order to communicate with the dead. This is something Melenie Gibb is familiar with. And, well, she'll kind of try to push that as, I don't know about that stuff. Here's Melanie Boudreau being questioned by John Pryor about some of these beliefs.
Not a unusual or a new subject to you as part of being in the LDS faith, is that right?
I didn't have a great grasp on it, but from what I understood it, the basis came from the scriptures.
Now, did you ever speak directly, and I mean face-to-face, to Chad about the children?
Are you referring to Tylee and
Tylee and JJ.
I don't know if I did.
Okay. So any sort of information that you received about what Chad may have said, quite frankly, almost all of it came from Lori Vallow, did it not?
Most of it came from Lori Vallow.
Okay. You mentioned the name Julie Rowe. That name has come up previously. How do you know Julie Rowe?
I've never met Julie Rowe.
Do you know anything about what Julie Rowe does for an occupation?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
I believe she had a set of podcasts where she would talk about spiritual beliefs.
Okay. Did you ever attend any of her gatherings?
No.
And as far as Melenie Gibb, did you ever participate in any of Melanie Gibb's podcasts?
No.
Okay. Now, this idea of casting, you mentioned the idea of casting. Was that casting also part of your LDS faith?
It talks about casting out in the scriptures. I wasn't very familiar with it, but
Okay. I want to ask you a little bit about the term energy work. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
I think some people believe in doing different types of energy work.
And
I guess I don't
give
know
me an
exactly
example of a type of what type of energy. What would be an example of a type of energy work?
I'm not super familiar on it, but from people I've met that do energy work, they will either almost like a reading.
Okay.
They'll say if you have certain cords attached or certain connections to like your ancestors.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of does. But the term of vibrations, have you heard that term before?
Yes.
And what is vibrations?
I believe in energy work that you can be on a higher or lower vibration
like a frequency.
And that frequency is used for what?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm not super familiar on the frequencies.
Would it be fair to say that some of this energy work is to be able to communicate with other entities?
Yes.
Okay. It could be used to communicate with the dead, right?
Yes.
Ancestors.
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever participate in energy work with Lori and Melenie Gibb?
I didn't really know a whole lot about energy work. From what I remember, I think Melenie Gibb was more familiar with it. So I would listen to their ideas, but I don't know if...
Right. And your recollection is Melanie Gibb was the one who was instructing you and Lori about the different aspects of vibrations.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying. These are facts, not in evidence.
Abstain.
Move to strike.
The question is stricken.
Would Melanie Gibb teach you about this vibrations and energy work?
I don't remember talking a lot with Melanie Gibb about vibrations or energy work.
You do have a recollection, though, that Melanie Gibb was more versed in the understanding of
Objection,
energy.
Your Honor, misstates testimony.
Overruled.
You do have a more distinct recollection of Melanie Gibb teaching you about the different aspects of energy work, right?
I don't have a distinct memory of talking about all the different aspects.
Okay. But she was well versed.
Right.
I'm sorry, Judge.
Cutting her off before she's done, please. You can complete your answer.
Thank.
Sorry, I don't think I was going with that.
All right, I'll re-ask it. I apologize for interrupting you. I've got it in here and I want to bring it out and it's coming out too fast, so I'll try to slow down. Melanie Gibb had a better understanding of this vibrations and energy work than you did.
I believe so, yes.
And this was something that, were you aware of whether she went to remote camps and talked about this energy work?
Yes, she told me she went to camps and different things for that. I don't remember, but I think it would be sometime maybe in 2019 or 2018.
Okay. And at that point, was it your understanding that Melanie Gibb was teaching this energy work, or at least instructing it to people at these remote camps?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
It sounded like she was maybe teaching at those classes or at if there were camps or meetings, whatever she was attending.
And again, this was in 2018, 2019?
I'm not sure, but I lean towards 2019.
Okay. Now, this idea of this term zombie, that was a term that you heard from Lori Vallow, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Melanie Boudreau also testified in trial about the 144,000. And what she says here is a big clue that says that Chad Daybell was not necessarily looking into the Church of the Firstborn until recently because he was still researching it.
At some point, did Chad or Lori talk to you about the Church of the Firstborn?
Yes.
What, if anything, did they indicate in relation to Chad's role with the Church of the Firstborn?
That Chad believed he was to help organize and learn more about the Church of the Firstborn.
Did Chad and Lori ever share with you what they believed their mission in this world to be?
I believe it was to help with the second coming of Jesus Christ.
And we talked about the dark and light and you turning to Chad for advice. Were those some of the things that you would ask Chad if someone was dark or light?
Yes.
At some point, did you learn a different term for people that were possessed?
Yes.
And what was that term?
Zombie.
Do you recall who introduced that term to you?
I believe it was Lori. So that there was some type of darkness that you couldn't cast out. And so if this
that the Lord in his due time would have to take, that person would pass away because this darkness was too much or something like that.
The truth is, Melanie Boudreau is acting that she doesn't know much about this, when in fact witnesses say that they were able to witness Melanie Boudreau and Lori talking about her own children being dark. There was a point, and we'll get to that later, where all they do is talk about zombies. Tylee Ryan was a zombie and is now deceased. Charles Vallow was a zombie and he's now deceased. Tammy Daybell is a zombie, but she's still alive for the moment. But what does it mean when you're a zombie? And we've explained this a few times. It means that Tammy's spirit is no longer in her body or in control of her body. She's gone to a place where she's in limbo, a spirit prison in a cage, and cannot be released until she has been, basically, let's just say it, murdered. All right, guys, we're moving right along right now, and it probably won't repeat like you're used to because I would have to start over from a long break. I have a huge diary that I've been putting together in order to do this series, and it's just not drawing the interest it used to. Those of you that stuck with me, thank you so much for being patient and giving me that support that has so much need. Don't forget to like, share, and hit the notification bell. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.